Hello and welcome, curious minds, to the Wonder Box, your portal to the past, where we dust off the forgotten corners of history, unearth the unbelievable, and draw out the sparkling lessons that are still dazzlingly relevant today. Here at the Wonder Box, we believe history isn't just a collection of dates and names. It's a treasure trove of human experience, brimming with stories that can both astound and guide us. Today, we're venturing into a historical episode that is so peculiar, so utterly unexpected, that you might think it's a tall tale spun for amusement. But I assure you, what we're about to explore is a documented, verifiable slice of history, albeit one that is often relegated to the footnotes, chuckled at in passing, or simply unknown to many. Prepare to be amazed, and perhaps even a little bit bewildered, as we delve into the story of the Great Emu War of 1932 in Australia, a conflict where the Australian military, armed with machine guns, faced off against birds, specifically emus. Yes, you read that right, a war against birds. And spoiler alert, the birds kind of won. Now, before you dismiss this as a quirky anecdote, I urge you to stay with us. Beneath the surface absurdity of this event lies a wealth of valuable lessons about human hubris, the delicate balance of ecosystems, the unintended consequences of our actions, and the crucial need for adaptability and humility when faced with complex challenges. The Great Emu War, despite its comedic undertones, is a fascinating case study in how even the best-laid plans can go spectacularly awry when we fail to understand the nuances of our environment, and perhaps more importantly, when we underestimate the resilience and resourcefulness of nature itself. So, open your minds, prepare to be entertained, and let's unlock the Wonder Box to uncover the bizarre, yet surprisingly insightful story of the Great Emu War. Setting the stage, post-war hopes and hard realities in Western Australia. To understand the Emu War, we need to set the historical stage. The year is 1932. The world is grappling with the Great Depression, an economic catastrophe that rippled across the globe, leaving unemployment, poverty, and hardship in its wake. Australia was not spared. Already struggling after the economic downturn of the late 1920s, the Depression hit Australia hard, particularly impacting its agricultural sector. In Western Australia, the situation was particularly dire. Following World War I, the Australian government, in an effort to boost agricultural production and reward returning servicemen, had launched a scheme known as the Soldier Settlement Scheme. This initiative aimed to transform vast tracts of underutilized land into productive farmland, offering plots to veterans with the promise of a new life and livelihood. Many ex-servicemen, eager to rebuild their lives after the horrors of war, took up this offer, venturing into the largely uncleared and often challenging terrain of Western Australia to establish wheat farms. These soldier settlers were resilient and hardworking, but they faced immense challenges. The land was often marginal for farming, the climate harsh and unpredictable, and resources were scarce. They were battling against the elements, struggling to clear the scrubland, establish crops, and make a living in a time of economic hardship. Their hopes were pinned on the land, on the promise of a bountiful harvest that could secure their future and ease the burdens of the Depression. However, nature had other plans. Unbeknownst to the struggling farmers, a different kind of army was massing on the horizon, not of human soldiers, but of emus. The emu onslaught. A feathered foe emerges. The emu, Dromaeus novaehollandii, is Australia's largest native bird, a flightless giant standing up to 6 feet tall and capable of running at remarkable speeds. Native to Australia and well adapted to its diverse landscapes, emus are generally nomadic birds, their movements dictated by the availability of food and water. They are opportunistic feeders, their diet consisting mainly of grasses, seeds, fruits, and insects. In 1932, an unusually large emu breeding season led to a significant increase in the emu population. Furthermore, drought conditions in the interior of Western Australia pushed these large flocks towards the coast and agricultural areas in search of food and water. The newly cultivated wheat fields of the soldier settlers, representing a veritable buffet of readily available grain, proved irresistibly attractive to these hungry birds. Suddenly, the farmers' hard-won crops were under siege. Flocks of emus, sometimes numbering in the thousands, descended upon the wheat fields, trampling and devouring the crops that represented the farmers' livelihood, their hopes for survival in the harsh economic climate. These were not just a few birds pecking at stray grains. This was a full-scale avian invasion. The emus, in their relentless pursuit of food, were tearing down fences, destroying crops, and leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. The farmers were desperate. They were battling not only the depression and the harsh environment, but now also a seemingly unstoppable feathered plague. Traditional methods of pest control, like scarecrows or shooting with rifles, proved woefully inadequate against the sheer numbers and resilience of the emus. These birds were large, tough, and surprisingly intelligent. They were also incredibly fast, easily outmaneuvering farmers on foot or even on horseback. The farmers felt overwhelmed, besieged, and utterly helpless as they watched their crops, their source of income and sustenance, being systematically destroyed. Desperate measures, calling in the military. In their desperation, the farmers turned to the government for help. A delegation of farmers representing the affected districts approached Sir James Mitchell, the Premier of Western Australia. They pleaded for urgent government intervention to address the emu crisis and save their livelihoods. The farmers were not asking for financial handouts. They were asking for assistance in dealing with what they perceived as an overwhelming pest problem. They requested military assistance, specifically asking for machine guns to be deployed to cull the emu population and protect their crops. Now, this might sound like an extreme request, but it's crucial to understand the context. These were ex-servicemen, men who had seen the horrors of war and understood the power of military technology. In their minds, if rifles were insufficient, then machine guns, weapons designed for large-scale conflict, might be the only way to effectively combat the emu onslaught. They saw it as a battle, a war against the birds threatening their survival. Premier Mitchell, sympathetic to the plight of the farmers and perhaps intrigued by the unusual nature of the request, decided to take the matter up with the Minister for Defense, Sir George Pearce. After some consideration, and likely with a degree of amusement and perhaps a calculated sense of public relations opportunity, Minister Pearce agreed to provide military assistance. It's possible he saw it as a way to boost public morale during the Depression, a quirky story that could divert attention from the grim economic realities. He authorized the deployment of soldiers and machine guns to Western Australia, effectively declaring war on the emus. The task was assigned to the Royal Australian Artillery, and the military operation was placed under the command of Major G.P.W. Meredith. Major Meredith, a seasoned soldier, was tasked with leading a small team of soldiers equipped with 2 Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition to combat the emu menace. The stage was set for what would become known, somewhat ironically, and with the benefit of hindsight, as the Great Emu War. Operation Emu, Machine Guns versus Feathers. In October 1932, Major Meredith and his men arrived in Western Australia, ready to engage the enemy. Filming for newsreel purposes was even arranged, adding a layer of public spectacle to the already bizarre operation. The soldiers, armed with their Lewis machine guns, were confident that they would quickly and efficiently deal with the emu problem. After all, they were trained soldiers, equipped with modern weaponry, facing flightless birds. What could possibly go wrong? The first attempt to engage the emus took place near Campion, Western Australia. Farmers had corralled a large group of emus, estimated to be around 50 birds, into an ambush point. Major Meredith and his men set up their machine guns, ready to unleash a barrage of fire upon the unsuspecting birds. However, things did not go according to plan, almost immediately. As the soldiers opened fire, the emus scattered. They didn't just fall in heaps, as might have been expected from a concentrated machine gun attack. Instead, they proved remarkably agile and resilient. Emu populations are naturally dispersed, not dense, so herding them was already an unnatural, difficult task. The birds ran in multiple directions, using their speed and agility to evade the machine gun fire. The machine guns, designed for stationary targets or massed infantry, proved remarkably ineffective against the mobile, fast-moving, and dispersed emus. The first encounter resulted in very few emus being killed, and a considerable amount of ammunition being expended. Subsequent attempts to engage the emus proved equally frustrating and futile. The soldiers tried various tactics: ambushes, pursuit, even attempting to drive the emus into killing zones, but the emus consistently outmaneuvered them. They were too fast, too agile, and too spread out. The machine guns were heavy and cumbersome, difficult to reposition quickly enough to track the rapidly moving birds. The emus, seemingly unfazed by the bullets whizzing past them, simply ran away, often unscathed. Major Meredith, initially confident, began to express grudging respect for his feathered adversaries. In a report to his superiors, he famously compared the emus to Zulu warriors, noting their ability to withstand multiple hits and their tactical dispersal, stating, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with bullet after bullet, and then disperse and gallop off." After several days of fruitless efforts, and having expended a significant portion of their ammunition with minimal success, the soldiers were forced to retreat and regroup. The first phase of the Emu War had been an undeniable failure. The emus had effectively won the first round. Round 2, tactical adjustments and continued frustration. Despite the initial setbacks, the military was not ready to concede defeat. After a brief period of reassessment, Major Meredith and his men returned to the field for a second attempt to subdue the emu hordes. They adjusted their tactics, attempting to be more mobile and aggressive in their pursuit of the birds. They mounted one of the machine guns on a truck, hoping to increase their mobility and firing speed. However, this tactical adjustment also proved largely ineffective. The truck was slow and clumsy in the rugged terrain, and the emus were still faster and more agile. The vibrations of the truck made accurate machine gun fire even more challenging. The emus continued to evade the soldiers, leading them on frustrating chases across the countryside. The soldiers managed to kill some emus in this second phase, but the numbers were still far too low to make any significant impact on the overall emu population or to protect the farmers' crops. Public and media reaction to the Emu War was evolving. Initially, there might have been a degree of amusement and curiosity about the unusual military operation, but as the weeks dragged on and the soldiers' lack of success became increasingly apparent, public sentiment began to shift towards ridicule and criticism. Newspapers lampooned the military's efforts, dubbing the conflict the Emu War and highlighting the absurdity of the situation, a modern army being outsmarted by birds. The cost of the operation also came under scrutiny. The deployment of soldiers, the use of machine guns and ammunition, and the fuel and logistical support were all costing taxpayers money. And for what? Very few emus killed and the farmers' crops still under attack. The Emu War was quickly becoming a public relations disaster for the government and the military. After approximately a month of operations, and having reportedly killed just a few hundred emus, estimates vary, and some are likely exaggerated, Major Meredith and his men were finally withdrawn. The Minister for Defense, Sir George Pierce, under increasing public pressure and facing mounting evidence of the operation's futility, ordered the military withdrawal. The Great Emu War as a military operation was officially over, and it was, by all accounts, a resounding defeat for the humans. The emu victory and the aftermath lessons learned? The withdrawal of the military did not, of course, solve the emu problem for the farmers. The emu population remained large, and the birds continued to raid crops. In the aftermath of the military debacle, the government did eventually provide farmers with a bounty system, paying farmers for each emu scalp they could produce. This bounty system proved to be far more effective than the military operation. Farmers, motivated by financial incentives and using more appropriate tools like rifles and traps, were able to cull a significant number of emus. It's estimated that tens of thousands of emus were killed under the bounty system in the following months and years. So, in a strange twist, the farmers ultimately achieved some measure of success, but not through military might. It was a pragmatic, localized, and incentive-based approach that finally made a difference. Not a grandiose, machine-gun-led war. The Great Emu War, despite its farcical elements, had a profound and lasting impact, though perhaps not in the way anyone initially anticipated. Firstly, it became a potent symbol of human hubris and the folly of underestimating nature. It starkly demonstrated that even advanced technology and military might are no match for the resilience and adaptability of the natural world when we fail to understand it and work with it, rather than against it. Secondly, the Emu War highlighted the importance of appropriate strategies and tools for dealing with specific challenges. Machine guns, designed for warfare against human combatants, were simply the wrong tool for the job of controlling a dispersed population of fast-moving birds. The bounty system, on the other hand, provided a more decentralized and effective approach, empowering local communities to address the problem in a way that suited their specific circumstances and resources. Thirdly, the Emu War served as a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of human actions on the environment. The expansion of agriculture into emu habitat, coupled with the unusually favorable breeding conditions, created the very situation that led to the conflict. It was a reminder that our actions have ecological repercussions and that disrupting natural balances can lead to unexpected and sometimes problematic outcomes. Finally, and perhaps most surprisingly, the Emu War became a part of Australian folklore and national identity. It's often recounted with humor and self-deprecation, a quirky story that Australians tell on themselves. It's a reminder that even in the face of adversity, and even in the face of our own mistakes, there's room for humor, for learning, and for a uniquely Australian brand of resilience and good-natured self-mockery. The Great Emu War, a truly unforgettable piece of history. What did you think of this story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed diving into this wonder with us at the Wonder Box, please give this video a like. It helps grow our curious community. Want to become a Wonder Box explorer? Subscribe and ring that bell to join us for our next adventure into the amazing world around us. We have so much more to discover together. Thanks for watching.